same author, but all under the pen name of Franklin W. Dixon. Anyways, I really cut my reading teeth on these when I was a kid. I read a lot of them. So today I'm going to read you, it's The Secret Warning. I'm not sure when this was originally published, but probably many years ago. I'm thinking maybe the 40s or so, thereabouts. Hard to say. I didn't Google that, but oh my, I stand corrected. 1955. Okay. Anyways, Chapter 1. A Ghost Walks. A loud ring of the doorbell startled the Hardy Boys as they sat watching a TV mystery. Joe turned down the volume. Who could that be at this time of night? The blonde 17-year-old wondered aloud. Maybe a client of Dad's. It can't be Mom or Aunt Gertrude, 'cause they have a key. Frank, dark-haired and a year older than his brother, got up and strode to the door. A telegraph manager was standing on the front porch. Cablegram for Fenton Hardy. Frank signed for the message and took it back to the living room. For Dad, he reported. Coming from overseas. This may be urgent. We'd better open it, Joe suggested. Frank slit the yellow envelope and read the contents. Good grief, he explained. Beware the Pharaoh's head, doomed to all who seek it. The Pharaoh's head? What does that mean? Frank shrugged. Search me. Well, who sent it? I don't know that either, Frank said, perplexed. There's no name on the message, but it came from Cairo, Egypt. Joe took the cablegram and studied intently, then hurried out to the hallway telephone and called the local telegraph office. When he hung up, he frowned in puzzlement. Frank, coming to the hall, queried, What did they say? The message was received just that way, unsigned. Apparently, there's no rule requiring a sender to include his name. I think we better contact Dad right away, Frank decided. Fenton Hardy, formerly a detective in the New York City Police Department, had retired to the seaside town of Bayport and soon had become nationally known as a crack private investigator. His two sons, Frank and Joe, who had inherited their father's sleuthing talents, often helped out on his cases. The boys hurried downstairs to switch on the powerful shortwave radio in the detective's study. Mr. Hardy always carried a compact transceiver in order to be able to communicate with his home in case of an emergency. Frank beamed out the usual code call repeatedly, but the only response was a jumble of static. He must be away from his hotel or wherever he's staying, Joe said. Could be. Frank glanced at the windows. A flash of lightning brought an extra loud crackle from the speaker. Or maybe we're not getting through. That storm brewing out there may be interfering with our transmissions. After a few more minutes, the boys gave up for the time being and went back downstairs. A loud clap of thunder sounded as they reached the living room. Boy, it looks as if we're in for a real cloudburst, Frank remarked anxiously. I sure hope Mom and Aunt Gertrude don't get caught in it. He was about to resume his seat in front of the television when he heard Joe gasp. "Thought I saw something in the window." Frank stared quizzically at his brother. "You mean a person or what?" "I don't know," Joe said. "It was just a fleeting impression. May it be my imagination." "Is the prowler alarm on?" "Not yet. Mom said to leave it off till they get home." Frank added with a grin, "You know Aunt Gertrude. She'd already pin our ears back if the alarm system went off, just to say we're coming out of the house." Joe chuckled as he imagined his tall, peppery aunt's reaction to being caught in a blaze of floodlights, accompanied by a shattering alarm signal. "Think I'll take a look outside anyhow," he told Frank. "It won't hurt to make sure." Joe was just starting into the hallway when the doorbell rang. "Now what?" he muttered. As he switched on the porch light, he yanked open the front door. A man stood clutching a cane. He wore a felt hat and a Navy officer's raincoat. "Captain Ernie, welcome aboard, sir." The man's already weather-beaten face broke from a wide grin into a wide grin. "Howdy, Joe." He saluted and gave the boy's hand a brisk squeeze as he limped inside. Hearing their voices, Frank hurried to greet the visitor. "Dad will be sorry he missed you," he said as they shook hands. Captain Phil Burley. Ernie was an old friend of the Hardys. Now retired, he lived alone in the house on the coast north of Barmet Bay and devoted his time to writing books on sea lore. "I probably should have phoned," the captain apologized, "but I had to come to Bayport on an errand. Anyway, so I took a chance." He doffed his hat and coat, revealing a crisp gray crew cut and slight but wiry build. As Joe took his things, there came the sudden sound of a drenching downpour. Rain pelted the roof and splattered against the windows. "You got here just in time," Frank said. Captain Ernie nodded and tapped his thigh. "Hurricane weather. My game leg always tells me when we're in for a blow." His ruddy face turned serious. "By the way, did you boys have a visitor?" Frank shook his head and said no. "Why, sir?" "When my taxi drew up here, I saw a man standing just outside the hedge around your grounds. He darted off as the headlights beamed on him." Joe exchanged a quick, startled glance with his brother. "What did he look like?" "Rather odd," said Captain Ernie. "I suppose that's really why I mentioned him. He had a black coat or cloak, a bushy red beard, and, well, something strange about his eyes." The boys escorted their visitor into the living room. As Frank turned off the TV, Captain Ernie asked, "You fellows home alone?" "We are just now," Joe replied. "Mom and Aunt Gertrude have gone to a concert." Seeing the captain's thoughtful frown, he added, "Did you want to see Dad, sir?" "As a matter of fact, I did, but I might as well put the case in your hands." Frank settled eagerly into a chair. "You have a mystery you want investigated?" The captain nodded as he filled his pipe. "Doesn't amount to much, probably. But all the same, I'd like to know what's behind it. Twice recently, my house has been broken into." "Was anything stolen?" Joe replied. "No, because both times I woke up and scared the intruder off." The first time, Captain Ernie related, his study had been ransacked. On the second occasion, the burglar had come into his bedroom. "Did you see him well enough to give us a description?" put in Frank. time I switched on the light, he was out the window, away over the back porch roof. When did this happen? Joe asked. The first time was on Friday, and the second attempt was just last night, Sunday. Frank said, any idea what the thief was after? Not at all. I never keep any large amount of money in the house. Captain Ernie puffed on his pipe for a moment. Incidentally, I've had a strange feeling of being followed several times lately, including on my way to Bayport. But that may be pure bosh. Again, the boys exchanged glances. Captain Early, with his brilliant war record, was certainly not a man given to fearful flights of imagination. Jumpin' Juniper, you really have given us a mystery to work on, said Joe. Have you told the police about the break-ins? Yes, but naturally there wasn't much they could do except check for fingerprints, and there weren't any. Look, Frank said, we're trying to contact Dad earlier on another matter. Suppose I try again. Leaving Joe to entertain their guest, Frank hurried to the shortwave set in their father's study. This time, his cold call brought an immediate response. Mr. Hardy, speaking from Philadelphia, explained that he and his operative, Sam Radley, had just returned to the hotel. When Frank mentioned the mysterious cablegram, the sleuth reacted with keen interest. That message relates to the case we're working on, son, and it could provide an important lead. I'll give you and Joe all the details as soon as I return. Next, Frank told about Captain Ernie's visit. Certainly sounds as if something more is involved than an ordinary case of breaking and entering, Mr. Hardy said. But there's not much I can do from here. You and Joe will have to handle it for the time being. Say, there is one more thing you can do for me. Yes, Dad. Ask Captain Early what he knows about the legend of Whalebone Island. Mystified, Frank signaled off and returned to the living room. At the mention of Whalebone Island, Captain Ernie's face paled. Great Scott, he explained, it can't be. What's wrong, sir? Frank asked. The Navy man hesitated before replying. Whalebone Island, as you probably know, lies off the coast south of here. In colonial days, it was the hideout of a ruthless pirate named Red Rogers. Of course you've heard the name Jolly Roger. Frank said to Skull and Crossbones. Right, and the same name was sometimes given to Red Rogers because of his bloodthirsty sense of humor. Captain Early went on slowly. Red Rogers always wore a black cloak and had a bushy beard and a scar, which pulled down to the corner of one eye. Wow, Joe gasped. Just like that fellow you saw outside tonight. Captain Early nodded. Exactly. After Rogers was killed in a sea fight, the island was pretty much avoided. In fact, it was said to be haunted. At that moment, the captain's story was interrupted by a flash of lightning, followed by a deafening clasp of thunder, which seemed to shake the whole house. A second later, the darkness outside was lit up by a blinding flash of light. Look, Joe yelled and pointed. A red, bearded figure in the black cloak was peering Let's get back inside before we drown. Drenched to the skin, the brothers changed into dry clothes before resuming their conversation with Captain Early. Did anyone live on Whalebone Island in those old days that you're talking about? Frank asked. No, except for fishermen who camped there overnight or put up temporary huts from time to time. I suppose the stories of ghosts on the island may have arisen because members of Red Roger's crew were said to be returning home secretly, maybe to dig up buried treasure, put in Joe. Possibly, the Navy man agreed with a smile. Or fugitives from the law may have hidden there occasionally. At any rate, the spooky legends of Jolly Roger and his cutthroats finally died out, and sometime in the 1800s a lighthouse was erected on Whalebone Island. Then, in the closing days of World War II, a lighthouse keeper there named Tang went out of his mind. How come? Frank asked. Captain Ernie gave a shrug. He claimed the island was being haunted again by Red Roger's ghost. Most likely he had just cracked up under the loneliness and isolation. I suppose, anyhow, soon after that, the lighthouse was closed down. Because of what happened to Tang, Joe asked. No. The equipment was outdated, and a new light much more powerful had been built on Dory Point to serve the same general coast area. That's good popcorn. What about the island now? Frank inquired. Nothing. It's abandoned as far as I know. The brothers were greatly intrigued. Any hint of mystery attracted them, and many times had plunged them into exciting sleuthing adventures. One of their first had been locating the Tower treasure. Recently, they had successfully uncovered the secret of a figure in hiding. Captain Early tucked his pipe into his pocket. Well, boys, it's been a pleasant visit, but I'd better be starting back. As a matter of fact, this is far later than I intended to linger in town. The Navy officer explained that he had motor trouble while driving to Bayport. I had to call for a tow car from a garage. That's why I arrived here by taxi. By the way, may I use your phone? Of course, help yourself, Frank replied. The captain checked with the garage and hung up frowning. Drat the luck, my car needs a new distributor, and they can't get one until morning. Frank and Joe immediately urged Captain Early to stay overnight. Grateful but embarrassed, he accepted. Frank showed the captain to the first floor guest room and laid out pajamas and bathrobe, while Joe wrote a note to his mother and aunt telling them about the unexpected overnight guest. He stuck it on the hall mirror. Then the boys went upstairs to bed, leaving only a hallway light on burning for their mother and Aunt Gertrude. Soon the household was dark and silent except for the steady patter of the rain. Some time later, Frank awoke from a start. From below came confused sounds, topped by a shrill, angry voice, punctuated by the sudden clash of china being broken. The latter noise roused Joe. Good night, he muttered. What's going on? That's Aunt Gertrude's voice. Frank explained. Come on, we'd better get down there. The boys dashed downstairs, almost colliding with their slim, attractive mother, who was on their way up. What's wrong, Mum? Joe cried out. Goodness, I hardly know, Mrs. Hardy stammered. Somebody peeked out of our guest room as we entered the house. Instantly the guest room was ablaze with lights. Frank Early was backing toward a closet, striving to protect himself, while the boy's tall, angular maiden aunt poked at him with their umbrella. "Aunt Gertrude, please," Frank exclaimed. "This is Captain Early, our guest." "Oh my goodness, it is," said Aunt Gertrude, adjusting her spectacles. "Why on earth didn't you say something?" "Madam, I've been trying to," the captain replied, slipping into his bathrobe. He explained that when he heard footsteps in the hall, he thought it might have been the intruder they had seen at the window. "So I peered out of the door," he said, and wham! Then, to the relief of the Hardys, Captain Early burst into hearty laughter. Even the women had to chuckle at his predicament. And when Joe mentioned the note on the mirror, Mrs. Hardy confessed she had not seen it. When the hilarity quieted down, the captain had tea with his host before retiring again. The next morning at breakfast time, the doorbell rang in loud, persistent spurts. "I'll get it," said Frank, rising from the table and hurrying into the front door. The caller was a huge, burly man with an iron-gray hair. "Where's Fenton Hardy?" he demanded roughly. "My father's not at home," said Frank. "May I get out of my way?" The man shoved him aside and started into the house. Frank reached angrily. "Wait a minute," he said, grabbing the man's arm. "Just who are you and what do you want?" The man's jaw jutted. "You'll find out, and mighty soon." The two might have come to blows if the sounds of their altercation had not reached the dining room. Joe came hurrying to see what was wrong, the captain limping after him. At sight of the Navy man, the visitor stopped short. His threatening snarl changed to a sudden growl. For a moment there was dead silence, and then the stranger muttered to Frank, "You tell Fenton Hardy that if Gus Bogg ever finds him, he's in for trouble." Without another word, the visitor turned and stalked out of the door. Chapter 3. Mystery Map. Both the Hardys and Captain Early were too taken aback to speak for a moment. "What the dickens was that all about?" Joe said finally. "This man wanted to see Dad about something and got sore when I said he wasn't home." Frank turned to the captain. "The sight of you seemed to quieten down, sir. Did you know him?" Captain Early shook his head slowly. "No. He did look a bit familiar, but I can't seem to place him." "Wait a minute." Suddenly, the Navy man snapped his fingers. "Gus Bogg, of course. He was a Boston third on the last destroyer I commanded. Always did have an ugly temper. Had him up before the mast many times. Believe I heard later he was court-martialed for threatening an officer." "Any idea what he's doing now?" said Joe. "Well, I know he put in for frogman training. He and another young chap who served under me on the Svensson. And much later I heard he'd been working as a commercial diver. But that was several years ago." "Wonder what he has against Dad," Joe mused. "Nothing serious, I hope," said Captain Early. That fellow has a bad temper. Dad can take care of himself," Frank said confidently. "Let's go finish our breakfast. Sorry for the interruption, Captain." Their aunt peered at the boys inquisitively as they returned to the table. When neither spoke, she said, "Sounded like some troublemaker. was he? Frank and Joe assumed blank, innocent expressions, although their aunt would never admit it. She secretly followed the Hardys' mystery cases with avid interest, and both boys could see that she was consumed with curiosity over the caller. Just summoned to see Dad, Frank said casually. I assumed that. I asked who he was. He said his name was Gus Bog. Miss Hartley fixed Frank with a gimlet stare, then turned to Joe. The boy's eyes were twinkling. Captain Erdy hemmed awkwardly. Oh, very well. The matter's of no real concern to me. Gertrude Hardy sniffed. But if anything serious happens as a result of that fellow's call, don't come to me for later advice or sympathy. The boys choked with laughter, and Frank happened to explain all to his offended aunt. When he had finished, she commented, So Joe Bach is a diver. That probably means your father is on the trail of some sunken treasure. And Bach is trying to scare him off. This modern underwater craze is entirely too dangerous anyhow. If Fenton is wise, he'll have nothing to do with this case. With a slight smile, the boy's mother gently changed the subject. After breakfast, Joe suggested to his brother that they check outside for footprints of the person they had seen in front of the window the night before. As they expected, however, the few faint traces had all been obliterated by the rain. Tough luck, Frank said. Well, at least the storm's over and the sun's out. Hey, here comes the mail. The postman was just ambling up the walk with his leather pouch. He greeted the boys with a cheery hello and handed over his sheaf of letters. Joe thumbed through them. Anything for me? Frank asked. No, just ads mostly. And business stuff for Dad. Suddenly, Joe stopped to stare at one envelope. Say, here's a queer one. Leaping lizards. Look at the sender's name on this, Frank. The older boy examined the envelope. It was addressed to Fenton Hardy in crudely printed red ink letters. Far more startling was the sender's name and address in the upper left-hand corner. R. Rogers, Whalebone Island. Good night, Frank asked. The same name as the pirate Captain Early told us about. Whose ghost we saw at the window, Joe added, and don't forget, Dad wanted to know about the legend of Whalebone Island. This may tie in with the case he's working on. It's postmarked Seaview. Frank noted that's the town on the mainland, right across from the island. Come on, Joe. Let's try to raise Dad on the radio. The two hurried to their father's study. By luck, they were able to make short-wave contact almost at once. Fenton hard to listen to their account of the previous night's events, and they exclaimed when he heard of the letter. Go ahead and open it, boys. This should be interesting. Joe slid the envelope and pulled out a rumpled, stained piece of paper. Both boys gasped. What they saw was on it. It's a map of Whalebone Island, Dad, Joe reported. No writing except for the label and a red mark and a red X mark at one spot. Any indication of what the mark stands for? Not a hint, but if you want to guess, how about a pirate treasure? Take it easy, Joe, Frank said. For all we know, this may be a fake or somebody's idea of a practical joke. Could be, Mr. Hardy agreed, but I think it should be investigated promptly. planning to go back with Captain Ernie to check his house for clues? Yes, Dad, Joe said. He's downstairs telephoning the garage to see when his car will be ready. All right, here's a suggestion. You follow Cruz along the coast in the Sleuth and proceed onto the Whalebone Island. I'll meet you there this evening. Swell. You got a date, Dad. After signing off, the boys hurried downstairs to inform their mother Captain Ernie was just hanging up the telephone. They have the distributor and the car will be ready in half an hour, he said. That's great, Frank remarked. Joe and I will drive you to the garage and take our motorboat to your place. We're going to meet Dad later in Whalebone Island. The boys hastily packed some supplies and camping gear in the trunk of their convertible, amid a stream of advice and dire warnings of pirate peril from Aunt Gertrude. A short time later, they drove off with Captain Ernie to the repair garage on the outskirts of Bayport. Ah, there's my car. Must be all set, said the captain, pointing to a blue sedan parked on the adjoining cinder lot. After dropping the guests, the boys drove to Bayport Harbor. They parked and locked the convertible. Then, shouldering their camping equipment, they headed for the boathouse where the Sleuth was berthed. As they neared the waterfront, a sleek, bright red motorboat came putting up to the pier. Hey, that's the Napoli, Joe explained. Hi, Chet. Hi, Tony. Dumping their gears on the boardwalk for the moment, the Hardys hurried out to greet their two friends. Tony Brito, at the wheel of his craft, was an agile, dark-haired youth. His passenger, stowing away some tackle, was Chet Morton, chubby-faced and solidly built. How was the fishing? Frank called out. Tony turned thumbs down. Terrible. We didn't catch a thing, Chet added, climbing out of the dock. And I had my mouth all set on some nice broiled bass for lunch, too. Pretty sad, pal. Joe grinned and patted the stout boy's midriff. But think of the pounds you'll save. Before Chet could protest, Joe said, Look, how would you fellows like to come with us on a search for pirate treasure? Tony swung eagerly up on the pier. You kidding? See for yourself, said Joe, taking out the map. Joe stared at it round-eyed. Whalebone Island. Is this really on the level? The map came through the mail. Frank explained. We don't know anything about it, but we want to find out. Tony, whose father owned a construction business, hesitated, then shook his head. I'd sure like to come, but my dad needs me to drive the truck. Well, I'm game, said Chet. Let's hear the whole story. We'll tell you on the way, Joe promised. Chet sped home to the Morton farmhouse in his jalopy to get some items of clothing and supplies. By the time he returned, the Hardys had fueled the Sleuth and were ready to shove off. Okay, now fill me in, Chet demanded, as they carried out across the calm blue waters of Barmet Bay. Frank scratched his head and shot a glance at Joe. Where should we begin? Let's start with us seeing the Jolly Rogers ghost last night, Joe suggested mischievously. You see, Chet, he haunts Whalebone Island. Haunts? Chet paled a bit and looked from Frank to Joe, hoping for signs of a joke. I knew there was some catch to this, but go on. As the story unfolded, Chet gulped and grew more nervous. His enthusiasm for the expedition seemed to be fading fast. Oh boy, this is just great, he complained. Not only a ghost, but probably crooks too. If this is connected with some case your father's working on. What is it they say every time I get mixed up with you Hardys? I run smack into. At that moment, a familiar voice crackled from speaker of the Sleuth shortwave marine radio. Aunt Gertrude calling Frank and Joe, "You must come home at once." Chapter 4. Danger Signal. Frank seized the microphone. "Sleuth to Elm Street. What's wrong, Aunt Gertrude?" he added with a sudden pang of fear. "Has anything happened to Mother?" "To Laura? Certainly not," Miss Hardy snapped. "Your mother's right here in the house with me. In fact, she's the one who found it." "Found what?" "Captain Early's cane." "Captain Early's cane," Frank repeated, mystified. "But he took his cane with him." "He took a cane with him," Miss Hardy corrected. "Your father's walking stick, to be correct. The one Fenton had to use last month when he sprained his ankle." "You mean the captain got them switched somehow?" "Of course. What else would I mean? Your father slept in that room when he couldn't get up and down the stairs. Don't you remember? His stick was hanging on the back of a chair in there. It's that rough. Nobly brown wood, as I suppose it was easy for the captain to confuse it with his own carved cane. Especially with all the excitement of her last night," Frank murmured, grinning. "What was that?" Nothing, Auntie." Joe gave his brother an experienced look. "Nuts, do we have to go back, Frank? We'll lose at least an hour." Frank thought for a moment. "No, I guess not." He spoke into the microphone. "Aunt Gertrude, the switching canes isn't important if the captain himself didn't notice any difference. We can take the cane to him some time later or even send it." "Huh. Well, suit yourself. At least I've informed you of his mistake." The Sleuth cruised on out of Barman Bay into the sweeping rollers of the Atlantic, then turned northward along the coast. It was nearing 1 o'clock when the boys finally sighted Captain Early's smug white villa, perched on a bluff amid a grove of gigantic silvery green poplar trees. At the foot of the bluff was a wooden dock, to which the captain's motor cruiser was moored. As the boys brought the sloop alongside and tied up, the captain emerged from the villa and waved excitedly. The trio scrambled out of the dock and hurried up the flight of stone steps which had led from the beach to the villa. Captain Early greeted the boys hastily and acknowledged the introduction to Chet with a quick handshake. "By the way," Frank added, "we had a radio call from Aunt Gertrude saying you left your cane at her house and took—" Yes, I've already discovered my mistake," Captain Early cut in. "But something more important has happened. Please come inside." The boys stepped into the comfortably furnished front room and saw at a glance the reason for the host's disturbance. Books had been yanked from shelves, drawers pulled out of an antique writing table, and a painting plucked down to expose a small wall safe, the door of which hung open. "Wow," Joe gasped. "As you see, the place was ransacked," said Captain Early. "The study and my bedroom upstairs seemed to have gotten an extra going through." He led the boys to the various other rooms to show them the havoc. "Have you taken inventory yet to see what's missing?" Frank asked. "Just a hasty one. But that's what's so strange. Apparently the burglars took nothing." "What do you keep in the house that is of value?" Joe put in. The captain gave a perplexed shrug. "Can't think of anything really except the silver, and that wasn't touched. Of course there are notes and manuscripts of books that I'm working on, but they'll hardly be of value to anyone except me." Frank said, "What about the safe?" "Just personal papers, diaries, documents such as my will, and 2 insurance policies. I had the combination jotted down in a notebook in my desk." Joe, who had brought along the Hardys' detective kit, looked at his brother. "Let's try for some prints." young sleuths dusted a number of spots in the living room, but the only fresh prints belonged to either Captain Early or Mrs. Calhoun, his part-time maid who came in on Tuesdays and Fridays. I'd say it's pretty obvious that the intruder wore gloves, Frank concluded. Well, thanks anyhow for your efforts, said the captain. At least the fellows didn't leave me any poorer. This may be locking the barn after the horse is stolen, sir, said Frank, but it might be a good idea to install a burglar alarm, or at least get watchdogs just in case the intruder comes back again. Good suggestion. Captain Early nodded. Meantime, how about some lunch? Chet brightened immediately. Sure thing, sir, if you insist. The boys enjoyed lamb chops served by Mrs. Calhoun and listened with keen interest to the captain's exciting sea yarns. By the way, said Captain Early as he sat back and filled his pipe, a rather odd thing happened to me this morning. After we left you, yes, on the way home my car ran out of gas. Chet paused in polishing off the last morsels of lemon meringue pie. That's happened to my jalopy 3 times. I found that my gas gauge was stuck. Well, there's nothing wrong with my gauge, said the captain. The needle showed empty, but it happens that when I filled it up yesterday, so there should have been quite a bit of gasoline still left in the tank. Sure your tank wasn't leaking, Joe inquired. Positive, I checked that later. The Hardys exchanged puzzled glances. Their father taught them to disregard no possible clue, however slight, when working on a mystery. What happened, sir, said Frank. I mean, after you ran out of gas. Oh, no trouble, luckily. I was picked up almost immediately by a motorist who gave me a lift to the next gas station. Then one of the station's hands drove me back in a tow truck with a can of gas. Frank's forehead creased thoughtfully. If the garage's mechanic parked your car in the outside lot overnight, someone could have drained most of the gas. Why should anyone do that? I don't know, but it might have been done to give them a chance to get at your car after you stalled and left it parked along the highway. Joe objected. That doesn't all add up. If someone was able to drain the tank during the night, he could have gone to the car right then and there. Maybe he did, but couldn't find out what he was after. Franks argued. Captain, when you went for gas, did you leave anything in the car that wasn't in it for the last night? Captain Early shook his head. No, nor can I think of anything valuable that I'd be likely to leave in the car at any time. Another mystery, and again the Hardy boys had to confess they were baffled. However, Frank and Joe promised to continue to work on the case. After they returned from Whalebone Island, Captain Early stumped down the stone stairs to the dock with the 3 bay porters and waved goodbye as the sleuth headed up the coast. It was late in the afternoon when they finally reached the town of Seaview. The boys put in a commercial dock to replenish their fuel, then turned seaward toward Whalebone Island, which lay about 20 miles offshore. Dusk settled over the ocean, and a few stars came out. Presently, the vague mask of Whalebone Island loomed ahead through the darkness. The tower of an old stone house stood out against the velvety purple sky. Where do we land? Chet inquired. Dad said there's a little natural cove or harbor around the southern side, Joe replied. He's going to meet us there on the beach. Suddenly, a red glow flashed from the lighthouse tower. It disappeared, to be followed by 2 shorter blinks than another. The boys were startled. That's no ordinary light, said Chet. Red means danger. It's a code signal, Frank murmured. He spelled out the letters of the message as they were flashed in Morse blinker. Danger. Keep away, Hardys. Well, that was 4 chapters authors of The Secret Warning. I've really left you in suspense, I'm aware of that. I guess I may have to continue in another video. Like I said, I always enjoyed reading these. I might even enjoy reading them now. Hard to say, but very wholesome reading, especially for kids. Always one twist after another. My sister used to read Nancy Drew all the time, and I read these. The first Hardy Boy book I read was The Tower Treasure, and I read a lot of them. I found out something interesting. I was in a second-hand store a few years ago, and they had Hardy Boy books like this, but they had older ones that looked a lot different. And they had a lot of the same titles, but the stories were different. The words and everything were completely different. Same titles, but different cover, different stories. Everything was really weird. I should have bought a few of them. Anyways, my friends, I hope you enjoyed that reading, and I hope that you're doing well. And I also hope that you're happy and healthy and looking after yourself and looking after each other. So until